What is it?
Okay, we are here with, this is interim 9.1, question 45. Kristen Method is here with me.
Hi, everyone.
So this is, question 45 is a tricky problem, so we wanted to kind of dig into this one. So Kristen, go ahead and get started on how you'd approach it, starting with kind of cups and how modeling how a student should approach this problem.
So here we go. A sloth is traveling along a branch in the Costa Rican rainforest. The table below shows the distance in inches, given information underline D, covered by the sloth in 1 minute intervals, represented by T. Which equation best represents the data? So I need an equation. Best represents the data in the table in terms of D and T. So the first thing I did, my process, was I annotated using our problem solving method called cups.
That it's more of a breaking it down method,
Yes,
not like straight up problem solving.
Breaked it down. Okay, so now I'm gonna move to the table. So I see that the first column is time in minutes, and I know that the problem is calling time T. D is distance is D in inches. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking time and distance, there is a relationship there. So I know that equations show relationships is a piece of knowledge.
And the other thing with that is, like, right away when you saw the table with two different variables, you're thinking relationships. And then what's the next step with
so the next piece of knowledge is knowing that I have a relationship, is figuring out what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable. Independent. So I know that the independent variable causes the dependent variable. So I'm thinking kind of which one is causing which. I know that the time is going to affect the distance. So that means my independent variable must be time. I'm going to also label that X. And distance is going to be my dependent variable, so I'm going to label that Y. So the first thing I did was I kind of determined independent versus dependent variables. So I know that my dependent is going to come from my independent. So I know that distance is going to be related to time somehow. Okay, so skills. So now I'm going to find, there's a lot of different ways you could do this problem. I am going to find the rate of change between my variables. So I'm looking here and I see all constant rates of change of 1 in the independent variable, and I see a constant rate of change of 3 in the dependent variable. Okay, so now I'm thinking rate of change is change in Y over change in X.
And that's kind of a, again, doesn't really matter, like, don't get too caught up in is it knowledge or skill, because you could say, oh, that's knowledge that they have to know. That's true. The next part is doing the skill of finding the rate of change. So, but again, that's a good point. Like, it doesn't matter sometimes where you put that, so don't get bogged down in that too much.
So my rate of change is going to be 3 over 1, which is 3. So,
what are the units with that?
Oh, yeah. That's going to be...
The units of 3 inches.
Oh, yeah, inches per minute. Sorry. Inches per minute. So I know that my rate of change 3 is going to go in with my time variable. So this is saying that 3 times some amount of time is going to result in a distance. So now I'm thinking, does that fit my table? So if I were to plug in some points to check.
So the process here is, so you use the math to kind of mathematically write your equation. So, and you could say that's a skill, but the next process that we're going through then is saying, okay, I think I have the right answer using the math, but it's that kind of checking your answer or checking your equation using the data provided. because some students would just stop at, oh, that's my answer, d equals 3t, but like the extra process that we have adults to make sure that we get this correct is to use the data given to make sure that it checks out.
So I'm going to use time for 1. So if I plug in 1 for time, 3 times 1 is 3. Does the sloth travel 3 inches? He indeed does. So 3 equals 3. So the point, the data piece 1, 3 does check out. Let's try another one. Let's do 3, 9. So if time is 3, 3 times 3 is 9. Does that equal the sloth's distance? Yes, it does. So I would say that my equation distance is equal to 3 times time is indeed the correct one.
And the other kind of process that we did, and I did this too, and I think Kristen, you did as well, is like I actually didn't even look at the answer choices to begin with. That's just something I typically do. You could have said, again, if you're teaching this to a student, you could have said, well, if you look at the answer choices, all of them are D equals. So that at least gets them started. So if they're really stuck, then they could go to the answer choices and see if something really helps them out. You know, this question easily could have had, though, T equals, 3D, just to try to confuse kids a little bit more. But in this case, the answer choices actually could have got the kids started. The other quick thing is our kids could have just simply done guess and check and plugged in these table numbers into the equations to see which ones balance out. We don't want our kids just resorting to that. We want them to understand the mathematical thinking behind it. That's a good way to check their answers as well. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. Cool. So again, this is one where I bet if Chris and I, so we just did this real quick, I bet if we spent more time thinking about this or came back to it tomorrow, we may be able to come up with some a different way of solving this or thinking about it. But this is just a good example of like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to try to dig in deep and think about all the different things that you did and knew in order to show mastery on this problem. So cool. Thank you guys.
Woo!